Chapter 10. Students tell me that this is the first chapter they read when they get their book. Is that true for you? It begins talking about hormones and ethnicity and their effects on our sexual behavior. And then it goes on to talk about the frequency of sexual behaviors. That's something most students are interested in learning about others. And then the Masters and Johnson sexual response cycle is one of the most prevalent theories when it comes to sexual response. It also will cover some of the newer sexual responses, and then there's information on fantasy, and ends with the effects of aging on the sexual response cycle. I'm going to do this chapter a little bit different. We're going to go through some slides, and I'm actually going to add some extra slides with information specifically about hormones and the sexual response cycle. So let's continue. I don't need to talk over all of these, as you can read them yourself. Hormone regulation is not a clear thing. We do know that testosterone acts as an activator for sexual desire in both men and women. We know that estrogen is the main hormone for females and testosterone is the main hormone for males, although we both have testosterone. Sometimes it's referred to as androgen in females. We also know that hormones have organizing and activating effects. But we do know that our responsiveness is controlled both by hormones and social factors. When I taught this class in a classroom setting, one of my favorite activities was to bring in a bowl of whole milk and food coloring. Then I would ask the students to give me messages that they got while they were growing up from red, I always used religion, yellow, parents, blue, the media, and green, their peers. And I would put, for each thing that they said as they talked about those messages, I would put a drop of food coloring. So often from religion, it's a sin to have premarital sex. You should only marry somebody of your own race. Those kinds of things often fell under religion. Peers, boy, the messages we get from our peers are many. The messages that we get from the media are many. And the messages that we get from our parents are a lot like that of religion. They're very clear-cut and dry. So we often have more of the messages that we get from the media and our peers. Then after we got all of those drops of food coloring in, I would put in some hormones. And my hormones were just barely a drop of Dawn dish detergent. So the science behind this was whole milk has lots of fat. Dawn dish detergent breaks up the fat molecules. So the colors would just spiral. They would often be beautiful pinwheels of colors. But it just goes to show that we can have really clear-cut messages, especially when we're younger. We tell our parents, no, I'm not going to have premarital sex. Our faith tells us that. Our parents encourage us. Most parents encourage that. Some say, be careful. Some say, be sure to use contraception. So it just depends on your culture and your family background. But most of the information that we see would see that there was very clear-cut messages from our parents and religion. And when you add those hormones, our bodies just go hog wild. And often the messages that we get from the media and from our peers overtakes those other more solid messages that we've gotten earlier in our life. So it just shows that it can be influenced by both hormone and social factors. Ethnicity is one of the most influential variables affecting which sexual behaviors we engage in. And many times, as we'll see on the next slide, just talks about the role of ethnicity. But many times, our ethnicity also is closely tied to certain religious affiliations. People with high levels of religion are more likely to hold conservative attitudes about sex and are less likely to engage in risky sexual behaviors. As this slide shows, in 2011, Brandon Davies, who played basketball at Brigham Young, he was suspended from the team because he had consensual sex with his girlfriend. The school's honor code prevented premarital sex. So that was an unfortunate situation for him and his girlfriend. The next part of this chapter is on Masters and Johnson's 4-phase sexual response cycle. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide because it shows the phases of excitement, plateau, orgasm, and the refractory period. And it also shows the male sexual response cycle and the female. So you can see in these first two that on the top that the differences between male and female are very few. The main difference is for males, they have to have that refractory period, the amount of time that it takes to get a second erection and ejaculation after the first. They just need that time to rebuild the fluids, to rebuild the senses during that time. These next two slides talk about both males and females who might be non-orgasmic. And as you can see, the resolution phase is slower. They both might need more after-sex play just to feel satisfied because they are not orgasmic. But there's nothing wrong with somebody who does not have an orgasm. We live in a society today where orgasm seems to be the goal, and so you think, well, something must be wrong with that person if they don't reach orgasm, but that is not true. You can certainly enjoy a satisfying sexual episode even without reaching orgasm. Then the last is for both a male and a female, somebody who goes to orgasm very quickly and then a rapid resolution. And you can see that this is more quickly achieved by a female. Males often need a little bit more time. Now this might depend on a male, might depend on his age, might depend on the newness of partner, might depend on how long it has been since he has had sex. But you can see a lot of similarities between the two. Helen Kaplan was another theorist who took Masters and Johnson's theory and created her own. She said we needed to have desire first before you can even become excited. Then she had the excitement, the plateau phase. She said that's just a continuation of the excitement phase, so she didn't think that it needed a special category. Then the orgasmic phase, and she said resolution is just basically going back to pre-excitement, so she didn't think it needed a name as well. So those are two the main theories. Your book does talk about a couple others that you will read about, but these are the two that I want to spend a little bit of time on. Again, here shows a model of Kaplan. It's almost like a stair step: sexual desire, excitement, orgasm, and then going back to the beginning. Here's a slide that I have added. Our social standards talk about how we have differences in goals when it comes to sex and love between men and women. The goal for men is often sex. They're very spontaneous, it's very physical. We know that men are more visual, so pictures can sexually excite them. For most women, now we see exceptions to both of these. For some women, sex is the goal. For some men, love can be the goal, but primarily sex is the goal for men, and for women, love is the goal. They want physical closeness. They are more romantic. They want a loving relationship. They want to have that commitment before they decide to have sex. And they are sexually aroused less often, probably because they produce less testosterone than males. Okay, what I'm going to do now is go through the different phases of the Masters and Johnson sexual response cycle so that we can talk about what happens during these phases. First is the excitement. This can take minutes to hours. We have pelvic vasocongestion. This is just an engorgement of blood vessels. The tissue becomes real swollen, red, and warm. And so for a female, that's the clitoris, labia, vaginal opening. For the males, it's the penis, and for both, the nipples. Generalized myotonia is increased muscle tension. There's also greater pulse rate, higher blood pressure, higher breathing rate. And then transudation is lubrication of the vagina. This is just transudating through the vaginal walls, and then lubrication of the penis is from the Cowper's gland. The second phase is plateau, and that's just a sustaining of the excitement phase. This can take seconds to minutes. Sex flush is a reddening, kind of a rash-like on the chest and head. For females during the plateau phase, they form the orgasmic platform. This is created by swelling of the labia minora and the outer third of the vagina. It narrows the vagina, which helps intensify contact with the penis. The clitoris also retracts under a clitoral hood. During this phase, the myotonia intensifies. Pelvic thrusting becomes involuntary. You don't have to tell yourself to start thrusting. It just happens. Then the third phase is orgasm. That's the climax. It's the shortest phase. Some say it's the best. I don't know why the best has to be the shortest, but it is. A female orgasm typically lasts longer. It's an explosive discharge of neuromuscular tensions. In our Western culture, orgasm appears to be the goal of activity, especially for males. During this phase, we also have some physiological things that happen. Tachycardia is excessively rapid heartbeat. The pulse rate, which is normal from 70 to 80, will go from 100 to 180. Hypertension is an increase in blood pressure. Hyperventilation, faster and deeper breathing. And then intense myotonia happens during the phase. Male orgasm usually includes ejaculation. The two phases are the feeling of inevitability, the expulsion of semen. And the two things are separate, even though they typically happen together. Why do some men reach orgasm more quickly? We wonder if it isn't the kind of stimulation, just the sensitivity of the penis and surrounding areas, or past learning. When we masturbate, we please ourselves, and so the faster the better. And when you're in a relationship, men need to learn to slow down, and so that may be one of the reasons that they reach orgasm more quickly. Men can learn to have multiple orgasms by not ejaculating during orgasm. This takes a lot of self-control. 5% of men can do that, and they have briefer refractory periods. Female orgasm, women say they often feel suspended, following by a climax of intense sensation in the clitoral and vaginal area, and also the anus. Why women experience orgasm differently? Different women have different nerve pathways, plus various social backgrounds. Some women have been given permission to enjoy it. Other women have been felt to feel guilty, and so that will make a difference on how they let themselves relax and enjoy the experience. And then the type of stimulation. Often manual clitoral stimulation is what brings a woman to orgasm. Some theories, Masters and Johnson said we have only clitoral orgasm. Freud said we have two types. He said that clitoral orgasm is from childhood masturbation, and if you continue to have clitoral orgasm as an adult, then you are regressing into your childhood. So we know neither one of these are true, that we experience all kinds of orgasm, clitoral, vaginal. It is an ongoing controversy. Deep penetration that stimulates the cervix is called a uterine orgasm. And we also have learned about G-spot orgasms. So there are many different types of orgasms. For female sexual response, Kegel exercises can help. This originally was intended to prevent urine from leaking from bladders, especially as we got older after having our babies. But we also know that those Kegel exercises, which are tightening of the pubococcygeal muscle, can help with not only preventing bladder leaks, but also to help with orgasmic satisfaction. So it's recommended that not only women, but also men practice those exercises. The resolution phase is where the body goes to the unaroused state, a deep body relaxation. Here just shows the Kaplan model next to Masters and Johnson's 4-phase and how they really do coincide with each other and are very similar, just a few differences. Some traps that we can get into is believing that everyone responds alike. We don't even respond alike day to day, let alone as individuals. We don't want to view the phases as separate. You probably didn't even know there was a 4 separate or 3 separate phases depending on the 2 different theories that we've talked about. You've just seen it as a continuum, and that's the way it needs to be. The misfocus on mechanics of sex, in other words, misfocusing on did you have an orgasm. If the feeling is right and the stimulation is right, it will happen automatically. Probably, did you come is one of the most asked questions during sex, and believe me, if she or he truly had an orgasm, you probably don't need to be asking. Believe it has to be a mind-shattering experience every time. Just because it was yesterday doesn't mean it's going to be today. You need to appreciate the times that it is. Believe that one needs to experience orgasm in order to be satisfied. We've already talked about that. And know there's great variability in the human sexual response cycle. Some differences. The male refractory period is probably one of the main. A former book that I had where I talked about this slide, they say there was no conclusive research. I think it makes sense because when a male has an erection and then has an orgasm and releases the seminal fluid, he needs more time to build those fluids and to re-stimulate himself. And this does depend on his age, newness of partner, and frequency of sex. Some other differences, females experience nipple erection earlier. Males tend to reach orgasm more quickly than females, although that wasn't what the one slide showed. So you can see these are some slides that I borrowed from my last book. I know they say the sin gauge, but when I copied and pasted, they continued to keep this background. So you can see there are some differences. Females are more likely to have multiple orgasms. They last longer in females. Males' blood pressure increases more. Males experience sweating on the soles of the feet and palms of the hands. So if men sweat, what do us women do? We perspire or glow. No, don't fool ourselves. Us women sweat as well. It's just women experience perspiration over their back, thighs, and chest, where men experience it on the palms of their hands and soles of their feet. But we do know there are more similarities than differences when it comes to the arousal patterns of males and females. The rest of the slides now are from your books. I'll stop here and let you continue to look at these on your own and enjoy the rest of the chapter. Have a great day.